took a lot for me to be able to even drive again.
They're the ones that suffer, that cry, that ask for mom and dad. What are we going to say when they ask where their parents are?
Imagine living your life knowing that a decision you made not only killed innocent people, but also destroyed several lives, including your own. That's the reality for the people in this video who chose to drive while drunk and ended up causing tragic accidents.
I've struggled with alcoholism my whole life. I'm so mad I ever took a drink.
And they still have to pay for their actions. Let's take a look at how these drunk drivers react to life sentences. In December 2020, 27-year-old Henry Eduardo Solana Mija was driving with his wife, 26-year-old Gabriela Andrade, and their 3 young daughters. It was supposed to be a fun family outing as they were taking the girls, who were between the ages of 1 and 5, to go look at some Christmas lights. But the evening would turn into a horrific nightmare. Out of nowhere, 23-year-old Grace Elizabeth Coleman, who was drunk driving, crashed into the family's vehicle, killing Henry and Gabriela and injuring their daughters.
Accused of driving drunk, slamming into a car carrying a family of 5 and killing the parents, now faces murder charges.
This all went down in Newport Beach. Henry, a hard-working family man, had some errands to run that night that this happened, but he wanted to spend some quality time with his wife and children. He felt bad that they had been cooped up inside for so long as a result of COVID-19. Take a look at how the family's vehicle was completely destroyed in the accident.
A devastating scene in Newport Beach, a family of 5 torn apart by a horrific car crash. The parents were killed and their 3 children were badly hurt.
And the driver behind the tragedy apparently has a history of driving drunk.
Yeah. Grace, who was publicly identified as the driver, has been arrested in the past for DUI. She did sustain injuries during the crash and was taken to the hospital. A guard was positioned outside her hospital room door to make sure she didn't try to make a run for it.
Coleman is in custody on suspicion of murder, DUI, and hit and run. Officers say in the minutes after the crash, the suspect attempted to leave the scene but was eventually caught.
Can you imagine not only doing this, but then fleeing the scene instead of owning up to what you did? She didn't even try to check on the family or offer them any sort of help. This is an incredibly heartless move.
This heartbreaking image shows emergency crews pushing a gurney with the youngest girl still strapped into an infant seat.
It was reported that the children were in the back seat and were incredibly distraught and pulling their mom's hair in an attempt to wake her up. She was already dead. One of the children had 2 broken legs and a broken arm. Another had a broken leg and damage to her head, and the other a broken ankle. They survived their injuries, but were left as orphans with an incredible trauma that will likely haunt them for the rest of their lives. A family member of the victim said that the only reason Henry had been driving in the area that night was because he needed to pick up some supplies from a former job site. It was just going to be a quick stop before going to view the Christmas lights. A neighbor of the family expressed his shock and disbelief over what had happened.
This is just, I just can't believe it. I just can't believe what happened.
Meanwhile, after recovering from her injuries, Grace was transferred to jail. Then 2 weeks later, she was finally brought in to face a judge.
Grace Coleman, the Newport Beach murder suspect, appeared on video from the jail as her lawyers tried to convince a judge to grant her bail.
There were some different things to consider in terms of whether or not the judge would grant her bail. One thing was her blood alcohol level, which was determined to have been twice the legal limit. Before getting on the road that night, she had been at a brewery. She was reportedly pictured in friends' videos drinking multiple mixed drinks and was seen falling into a bush, but she didn't drive herself home.
She's transported by a person to the safety of her home, did not drive, and chose to then get in her vehicle within minutes of arriving home, and within 10 minutes drove and killed 2 people.
Grace's lawyers asked for her bail to be set at $1 million. This is standard practice for those accused of murder. But there were several serious concerns associated with possibly allowing her to have bail. While in custody, she had made several remarks about wanting to hurt herself or trying to run away. There was also concern about her home life and if her parents could get her into even more trouble.
When the search warrant was executed at her residence, there was alcohol in her room. Her father was present and he was drinking when the search warrant was executed. And he also has a prior conviction for DUI.
But lawyers for Grace said that if she was to be released on bail, she would immediately be moved to an alcohol treatment facility where she would remain 24/7 and would have no access to alcohol. But the judge was not convinced.
Bail was denied. The DA says that Grace Coleman is accused of being involved in 2 other recent events involving alcohol and driving. One was just 3.5 months ago.
On July 29th, 2022, Grace was sentenced to 21 years in prison after pleading guilty to the crash that destroyed a family.
It's very painful because they're not here to be with us to celebrate those milestones. It's very heartbreaking, and I just want to give a message to people: be responsible, don't drink and drive.
Watch as Gabriella's mother wiped away tears while a translator read aloud her sentence in the courtroom.
It was the worst thing that I could have heard, a pain that I will never be able to overcome.
2 of the little girls wrote letters and included drawings. The letters were read aloud.
My name is Emma Sofia. I write this letter because I miss my mom. My name is Elena. I miss my mom and my dad. I feel sad.
The judge presiding over the case spoke to the surviving family members who were mourning the deaths of Henry and Gabriella. He was visibly emotional and had trouble speaking.
I sense strongly that they would want you to continue to live your life with joy, to appreciate every day, to raise those precious girls. I'm sorry.
Grace, who wore a mask in court, wiped away her tears as she listened to the family's impact statements. The DA, Jennifer Walker, spoke about her opinion on the sentence.
It was what I did hope for because Judge Prickett gave a lid of 21 to life. So as a representative for the people, I did not want her to receive any less than that.
Family members say the 3 little girls have been affected the most and deeply want their parents back.
They're the ones that suffer, that cry, that ask for mom and dad. What are we going to say when they ask where their parents are? They're the ones who ask.
In September of 2018, 48-year-old Todd Grudunsky put on his Packers jersey to go out for a day of partying. He went to 3 different bars and guzzled shots of hard liquor and plenty of beer while watching football. In total, he was reported to have taken 16 different drinks. Then he got into his pickup truck and ended up slamming into a car being driven by 25-year-old Angela Wimmer. She was badly injured and died in the hospital just hours later. Todd was arrested shortly after the crash. His blood alcohol level was still high an hour after the crash. But you won't believe what the craziest part of this case is. Todd had been arrested for DUI in the past. Not once, not twice, but 6 different times. In the year 2000, he was arrested twice, then once in 2001, twice in 2003, and once in 2007. It's hard to believe he was out of jail, much less had a valid license.
Investigation found that in case after case, Grudzinski got lucky. Plea deals, reduced jail sentences, cases where he avoided DUI charges altogether.
You'll be shocked to hear just how much Todd was able to somehow get away with over the years, time and time again.
2004, an odor of an alcoholic beverage on his breath. 2011, a report he was driving erratically. He's wasted, his wife said. 2017, a night out to have a few drinks, and an incidence of domestic violence.
Clearly, there were signs before this tragic accident that showed that Todd needed serious legal repercussions or court-ordered substance misuse treatment before he seriously hurt someone else. But this did not happen. If it had, Angela may still be here today. Angela lived a much different life than Todd. Angela grew up in Texas, where she dedicated her life to her Catholic faith. Her parents described her as confident and an outgoing girl who wasn't scared to try new things.
She actually really loved life. She had a warm personality, and she wasn't afraid to laugh and to make jokes and things like that.
While Angela was growing up, going to school and making memories with loved ones, Todd was living a very different life. Todd, the man who was a tree trimmer by profession, was constantly getting into trouble with the law, racking up charge after charge and mugshot after mugshot. Over 2 decades, he was arrested 15 different times. Despite being given multiple chances, he never changed his way. By September 30th, Angela had grown up, attended college, and moved to Colorado. All the time, she was getting ready to go to church, and Todd was preparing for a day of reckless partying. Here he is, captured on surveillance at one of the several bars he would go to that day.
At the first bar, a beer and 3 shots of Rumpelmans, another beer and a shot of tequila at the next one. Then, at the last stop, a beer, a whiskey, another beer, and 4 more whiskeys.
He took all of these before 12:39 p.m. He'd clearly gotten an early start. When he left the bar, Angela was sitting at a red light in her new Mazda when suddenly a pickup rammed into her.
911. There's a bad accident at Colfax and Kipling.
It was reported that Todd was traveling as fast as 64 miles per hour when he slammed into Angela. Angela's car went flying at 44 miles per hour. This would result in 3 other vehicles also being hit.
I saw a bunch of smoke, steam, something up ahead.
Becky, the woman in that video, is an EMT, and when she saw the crash, she rushed to help.
She was in such a position, I didn't see her immediately.
Then she ran to the truck, where a man in a Packers jersey appeared to her to be trying to get away.
Todd had put his car into reverse and was gunning the engine in hopes of getting away. Becky immediately realized something must be going on with this man.
He wanted out of there, and he would, when I was like, you've got to put it into park, and he'd just shake his head, nope.
Becky and other Good Samaritans were eventually able to get Angela out of the car, but it was clear that her injuries were very severe and that she would be lucky to survive. While she was rushed to the hospital, Angela's parents received a phone call that would change their lives forever.
The policeman said that she had been in a car accident and that she was in surgery and she was having brain surgery.
Angela's parents were greatly concerned and were in the process of trying to figure out the fastest way to get to Colorado when they received a second phone call.
And he said that that she had passed away. So that was the most horrible. I think that's the worst thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life.
Angela's parents were relieved that their daughter's killer was taken into custody, but they didn't understand why he had been permitted to be out on the road, considering his history.
I'm glad he's behind bars. I'm glad he's not out on bond. I just don't know. I don't know what to say. If they're not locked up, what's to keep them from driving and doing it again?
It appeared that Todd had finally, after all these years, run out of second chances. He was charged with murder, vehicular homicide, 3 counts of first-degree assault, and 2 counts of reckless driving. He initially pled not guilty, but was later convicted. In court, Todd was allowed to address the judge and tell him anything he would like to be considered before his sentence was handed down. He reacted to the likelihood that he would receive a life sentence and apologized to Angela's family.
I am so remorseful and so sorry that I did what I did.
Todd, who was also injured in the crash, explained how he was laying in a hospital bed when he turned on the news and realized what he had done. He had taken a life.
The second I knew what I did, the second I knew I was in an accident, I was remorseful. I reached out to a chaplain at the hospital immediately. I've expressed my remorse the entire time. I do not feel that I am a victim. The victim has passed away.
Todd went on to express his long-term struggle with alcohol misuse. He said that he wished he had never taken a sip of alcohol to begin with.
I've struggled with alcoholism my whole life. I'm so mad I ever took a drink. Not drinking behind the wheel, not just that, drinking, period. I wish I would have never drank. And I had struggled with it. And as time went on, I let my alcoholism fade what I have done.
Todd said that despite all the pain he caused as a result of his actions, he was determined to make a positive change and try to make a difference in the world.
Well, I am never going to drink again, and I will never let this moment right now fade. I will dedicate my life behind walls to helping others to never take a drink, to never drink and drive. I do all I can to help in here. with young men, and it's good therapy for me. But I am so sorry that my ignorance caused all this.
He also apologized to those he directly hurt by deciding to drink and drive.
I pray daily for their recovery. I pray for my own family and my friends and the friends of Angela Wimmer to recover. And I just want to apologize to everybody else involved, the West Metro Fire Department, the Lakewood Police Department, the court system. I'm sorry.
Todd ended by saying that he hopes that others will learn from his horrific mistake to never do what he did.
I hope people watch this and see this, and we'll never get behind a wheel again. Call an Uber, call a taxi, or better yet, give up drinking. So, again, my apologies, and my apologies to you, Your Honor.
While in court, the judge also gave other victims that were involved in the accident a chance to speak.
It took a lot for me to be able to even drive again.
He also heard statements from some of Todd's friends who came forward to try to express the good characteristics he had.
I've only known him to be caring and kind and helpful.
He has expressed his complete contempt for himself. He has stated how much he regrets the accident and would do anything to be able to change places with the victims.
But would the judge let their kind words sway his final decision and choose to offer life in prison with parole, or would he lock up Todd for good? Eventually, due to the extent of his previous criminal activities and the number of chances he had already been given, the judge's hands were tied.
In the end, Grudzinski received life in prison without the possibility for parole. The judge said his 5 prior DUI convictions couldn't allow him to give him anything less. Grudzinski will spend the rest of his life in jail.
Today, if Angela's parents want to visit their daughter, their only option is to drive to the cemetery and go to her grave. They remain dedicated to spreading awareness about the dangers of drunk driving in hopes that no more families are destroyed.
I just think if the legislatures and everyone would just have seen what we went through with our daughter, to have her in that car and not being able to get out of it. If they could just see that and see her life before, and what a waste of a life.
Becky, the woman who assisted in trying to save Angela's life, also recalls the trauma that she witnessed that day and wonders how it was ever allowed to happen in the first place. What was Todd doing on the road in the first place?
I've struggled a lot with that accident just because with 6 priors, why? Why is he driving? I don't understand that. Doesn't make sense to me.
That's a question we may never get the answers to. Can you imagine taking the lives of 5 different young people all in a matter of minutes? That's exactly what this next drunk driver did. On November 23rd, 2018, then 21-year-old Tanner Dashner was driving drunk through Fort Pierce, Florida. He was on the street in which the speed limit was only 35 miles per hour, but he was driving at a shocking estimate of 97 miles per hour. He ended up slamming into a Dodge Dakota, which was parked at a red light and had just barely been starting to accelerate. The Dodge Dakota flew into a BMW, which was in front of it. 27-year-old Kendon Tillett was driving the Dodge, which ignited fire as a result of the gas tank becoming compromised in the crash. Unfortunately, the Dodge was packed full of people at the time of the crash. In addition to Kendon, 17-year-old Alexis Cheney, 21-year-old Anthony Victor, 16-year-old Anthony Martin, and 21-year-old Darian Douglas were all killed. There was one other young girl in the car named Arione Stanberry. A passerby managed to pull the girl out of the vehicle and she survived. On the day of the crash, Tanner had been celebrating Thanksgiving a day early and was consuming a lot of alcohol. He had been at the bar that night where investigators say he was overserved. The bartenders continued to let him to drink even though he was heavily intoxicated. They also let him take alcohol out of the bar with him before getting into the vehicle and driving away. While he was at the bar, he took and posted this picture of himself on social media. The caption of it was, "Sloshed." His car essentially became a wrecking ball that endangered everyone on the roads that night.
Oh my God.
For the first time, surveillance video of the horrific crash that killed 5 people in St. Lucie County last November. You can see the victim's Dodge Dakota start to pull off when 21-year-old Tanner Dashner barrels his GMC Yukon into them.
Passers-by could barely believe their eyes as they watched all of this go down right in front of them. It was clear to all that this was an incredibly serious wreck. 911 calls began flooding in quickly.
It's on fire. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to pull somebody out of the car.
Tanner wasn't arrested immediately after the crash. In fact, it took 25 days.
Yeah, Michael Kelly, 21-year-old Tanner Ray Dashner now facing serious charges, including 5 counts of vehicular homicide and 5 counts of DUI manslaughter, carrying a $7.5 million bond.
Police say that Tanner's blood alcohol content was at a whopping 0.274, which is more than 3 times over the legal limit of 0.008. The court needed permission to obtain Tanner's medical records. This is part of why it took so long for the arrest to occur. A family member of Alexis Cheney spoke out about her reaction to the arrest finally being made.
While they are happy the individual responsible for her death has finally been charged and will face the consequences of his actions, nothing can bring back their beloved Alexis.
Tanner ended up avoiding going to trial when he pleaded no contest to the 5 counts of DUI, vehicular manslaughter. In court, the lone survivor of the crash tearfully shared her experience, recalling how she called out to her friends but didn't receive a response.
In the backseat, that's when I was screaming for let name, and she wouldn't answer me. So that's when I was like, can somebody please answer me? Nobody would answer me. So I screamed for help.
The sentencing day finally came on June 28, 2022, several years after the crash took place. Before sentencing, Tanner was allowed to address the victims' families. While sitting shackled in a blue prison jumpsuit with his hair slicked back, he held a handwritten statement which he read aloud. He addressed each of the families of the different victims individually.
To the family of Anthony Victor, I am sorry. I'm sorry that you'll never be able to see your son again. I'm sorry that you'll never get to see him smile or hear him laugh ever again.
As he went down the line, he addressed things that the family members of the victims would miss out on a result of his actions. This included things like the ability to comfort them in times of trouble and celebrate their different times of success.
I'm sorry that you will never get to hear your daughter tell you about her hopes and dreams for the future. I'm sorry that you will never get to see the impact that she could have had in the world.
He did not leave out Ariana Stanberry, the sole survivor who lost 5 friends in an instant and almost lost her life as well.
I'm sorry for all the emotional and physical trauma that I have caused you. I am sorry for the friends that you lost in this accident.
Family members in the court could be seen wiping away tears as Tanner continued.
I hope that you will be able to heal from this and have a happy and successful life. I've never intended to hurt anyone in my life. I regret the poor decisions I've made and am sorry to all the families that I have devastated because of this terrible accident.
He ended by saying that he hoped that his sentence, whatever it ended up being, would at least provide them some closure so that they could begin to heal and move on. Before the sentence was officially handed down, Tanner's father tearfully stood up and asked for mercy for his son.
This is a terrible mistake, and I pray that the families involved will be able to forgive Tanner.
Ultimately, Tanner was sentenced to 72 years in prison for his crime, meaning he will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. This is a photo of him leaving the courtroom following the sentencing. He wore a mask, which made it difficult to tell exactly what his reaction was, but he appeared stoic. The reaction outside the courthouse that day was one of relief, as family members of the victims could now finally begin to put all of this behind them.
I believe in God, and I can forgive, but I won't forget.
31-year-old Amber Peria of Tampa Bay, Florida, was under the influence of alcohol while driving on the expressway in 2017. She ended up hitting a car, causing it to fly into a different lane, where it struck 2 other vehicles and burst into flames. Luis Felipak, his wife Rita, and their 8-year-old daughter, Georgia, were all killed. Amber fled the scene but eventually could no longer drive due to how much damage her vehicle had sustained in the crash. She was then arrested. Just look at the intense damage caused during the crash. As soon as people realized what had gone on, they rushed to try and help the victims. But despite their best efforts, there was nothing that could be done to help the Felipak family. Reporters reached out to Amber's mother, but she did not respond. Amber's partner did give a brief statement.
It's a devastating situation for all parties involved.
Amber was found with 2 other prescription medications in her system that were used to treat anxiety. Could there be more to the story? Amber's partner seems to think so.
You know, it will come out, but I really don't want to say anything other than that.
During her first court appearance, Amber could be seen sobbing uncontrollably, wiping away tears, and appeared to be praying. She tried to get out of it, telling police that she regularly had seizures and that it was a seizure that caused the accident, not alcohol. Amber's grandma spoke to a reporter to back up this claim.
Ryan, the grandma told you she is not a monster.
That's right. The grandmother tells us that her granddaughter has had seizures in the past, and a seizure may have led to the crash on the Selman Expressway.
The court did not believe her and denied her bail. She laid her hand on the desk and openly wept. This wasn't Amber's first run-in with the law.
We checked court and jail records and found that Pereira was arrested only once before. In 2010, she was locked up in Hillsborough County for grand theft.
Amber was charged with DUI manslaughter, DUI with serious bodily injury, and leaving the scene of the crime involving death. She later pleaded guilty. Amber would not be sentenced until 2019, 2 years after the fiery crash. Her appearance was so drastically different that it's hard to tell that it was even the same person. Judge Christopher Sabella pointed out a comment that Amber made while being taken into custody about having ruined her life.
Yes, ma'am, your life is ruined, but you also ruined a lot of lives and ended 3 lives.
Louise's father took the stand to provide his victim impact statement. He didn't hold back his anger and heartbreak.
You've taken everything from us. You can't give it back. And nor will you ever give it back. I can't forgive you. There is no forgiveness for this.
He became so emotional that he could not continue and asked to take a break. Another victim who was involved in the crash but survived also came forward to tearfully explain her experience.
I wake up several times at night from pain, but also from nightmares. My nightmares include being left at the scene, abandoned at the scene, screaming for help when you weren't there.
While listening to the impact statements, Amber appeared stoic and did not shed any tears. Amber's defense asked for her to receive no more than 20 years, but the judge wasn't having any of that.
Judge Sabella slapped her with 50 years, which is pretty much a life sentence.
Watch as Amber finds out that she'll be living the rest of her life behind bars. She simply puts her head on the desk and once again sobs. This is a stark difference in comparison to how she behaved while the victims read their statements. Finally, the family members of those lost tragically soon had the justice they were waiting for. If anything can be learned from these horror stories, it is that it is never a good idea to get behind the wheel after consuming alcohol. It doesn't matter whether you think you're okay to drive or not. Getting behind the wheel after drinking could be the worst decision you make in your entire life and change everything forever. Don't risk it.
People at Fort Pierce are mourning the deaths of 5 young people killed in a fiery crash Friday night. Detectives say the 5 friends were all in the same car when another driver rear-ended their vehicle at the intersection of 25th Street and Midway Road. The victims had no chance.
I've never intended to hurt anyone in my life. I regret the poor decisions I've made and am sorry to all the families that I have devastated because of this terrible accident.
My name is Elena. I miss my mom and my dad. I feel sad when the accident happened.
They're trying to get somebody out of the car. It's a horrible wreck, so please hurry.
In a world where one single decision can change everything, we will delve into the heartbreaking accounts of those affected by these senseless accidents caused by drunk drivers. Lives forever altered, families torn apart, and communities left in shock. What happens when these drunk drivers are confronted with the consequences of their reckless actions? Will they seek forgiveness, or will they resist and remain unapologetic in the face of justice? In this video, we are going to uncover the stories of 4 drunk drivers whose irresponsible actions took the lives of many innocent people. It was November 23, 2018, when 21-year-old Tanner Doshner made a terrible decision to drive while he was impaired. He was going at a staggering 97 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. With this speed, he could not slow down his SUV and ran a red light that resulted in a crash into the back of a Dodge Dakota. The impact was devastating. The Dodge crashed into another car, a BMW, and things got even worse. The gas tank of the Dodge was damaged, and it caught on fire. Can you imagine how terrifying that must have been for everyone involved? Flames engulfed the car, people were trapped, and lives were hanging in the balance. Tragically, 5 people, 27-year-old Kendon Tillett, driver of the Dodge Dakota, Alexis Cheney, Anthony Victor, Anthony Martin, only 16, and Darian Douglas from Port St. Lucie lost their lives in that fiery crash.
Tonight, people in Fort Pierce are mourning the deaths of 5 young people killed in a fiery crash Friday night. Detectives say the 5 friends were all in the same car when another driver rear-ended their vehicle at the intersection of 25th Street and Midway Road. The victims had no chance.
The vehicle burst into flames on impact, killing all 5 people inside.
Tears streamed down the faces of the victims' family members as they expressed their profound grief and sorrow. The pain was immeasurable, and they sought justice for their lost loved ones. But wait, there's a glimmer of hope in this tragedy. A brave girl named Ariana Stanberry, just 14 years old at the time, miraculously survived. A courageous bystander pulled her out of the burning truck. But can you even begin to imagine the trauma she must have suffered?
I had to watch my friend die, and I looked back to the back seat and I just saw a bunch of fire.
Now here's the truly shocking part.
Police say Dashner was driving almost 100 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone when he slammed into the Dakota, and his blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit. Pictures show investigators removing 2 bottles of liquor from his Yukon and Dashner being swabbed for DNA.
The investigation finally led to Dashner's arrest after 25 days of the crash.
The man accused of driving drunk and killing 5 people in a fiery crash in Fort Pierce has been arrested exactly 25 days after the crash.
As soon as the trial began, the courtroom was a somber setting, filled with tears and broken hearts. The raw emotions of the victims' family members were captured on camera as they faced the person responsible for their loss. Dashner's father pleaded with the families to forgive his son and himself for this tragedy. Tanner Dashner himself read a heartfelt letter he had written to the families of those he unintentionally harmed. His words were laden with guilt and sorrow, seeking forgiveness.
I've never intended to hurt anyone in my life. I regret the poor decisions I've made and am sorry to all the families that I have devastated because of this terrible accident. I hope that you will receive some closure today and that one day that you can forgive me.
Tanner's defense attorney argued that his client was suffering from a traumatic brain injury, which led him to do what he did. But the judge didn't buy it. He rightly pointed out that there was no evidence to support that claim. Apparently on the night of the crash, Tanner posted a selfie on Snapchat, which he captioned, "sloshed." So clearly Tanner knew he was drunk and in no state to drive, yet he did. Considering each of the 5 DUI manslaughter charges, Judge Robert Makimson sentenced Tanner Dashner to more than 70 years behind bars. As the judge pronounced the sentence, a heavy silence filled the courtroom. Dashner's face displayed a mixture of shock, disbelief, and remorse. The weight of the consequences finally seemed to sink in, and the reality of spending more than 7 decades behind bars was now his fate. Dashner had hoped for a lighter sentence, a chance at redemption, but it seemed that the magnitude of his actions demanded a severe punishment. Speaking during the sentencing, Judge Makimson further said he usually does not give explanations for his sentences, but this was an exceptional case. A case of bad decisions and the consequences of those decisions. As the victims' families stepped out of the courtroom, emotions were still raw. Through tearful eyes, they shared thoughts on the sentence and their journey toward healing. The pain they experienced was immeasurable, but their resilience was equally powerful. Leslie Douglas, father to one of the victims, Darian Douglas, expressed that he still had problems sleeping at night, as losing a son is one of the greatest fears, a fear he is currently living with. Bian Victor, mother of Anthony Victor, with mixed expressions, said,
"It is what it is, but I feel so sorry for the family, Dashner, because I'm a mom. I know how they feel, and I know they hurt, but we're here too."
She was torn between her grief and understanding that Dashner's family was also suffering. Shamika Baker, mother of Alexis Cheney, was much relieved with the decision of the judge. She said,
"I've been waiting 3 years and 7 years. 3 years, 7 months for this day to come."
Ariona Stanberry, now 18, the sole survivor of that tragic night, bravely faced the cameras, expressed her belief that justice was served.
Happy that he's in jail, and I hope he's staying there forever.
The impact of that tragic night will be felt for years to come. Families will forever cherish the memories of their loved ones, and the community will remember the lives lost far too soon. The second story is about a 47-year-old man, Todd Grudzanask, who has gotten himself into some really big problems. He is an addict and confesses to the claims that he finds it difficult to stay a moment without alcohol. But what exactly has brought him to this moment? Let's go back to where it all began. It is September 30th, 2018. Todd had just woken up in the morning. He put on his Packers jersey and stepped out to a bar. Upon getting there, he sat down with his eyes on the television screen, watching the football match. Todd felt empty, and to enjoy the football game, he ordered a few bottles of rich alcoholic drinks. He was not new to drinking, so in less than an hour, Todd gulps down all the drinks he ordered, got himself into his truck, and drove out. But he wasn't done yet. After a few miles, he stopped the truck just in front of another liquor store and got some more drinks. At about 12:39 p.m., Todd had left the third bar, and at that point, he had already consumed no less than 16 bottles of strong alcoholic drinks. I think it'll be reasonable to conclude that Todd should have been dizzy and struggling to gain balance at this point. Well, this leaves me wondering if there was no security, barmen, or some other persons who could have called the attention of the local police. Sadly, nothing like this was done, and an innocent young lady would end up paying the ultimate price for something she knew nothing about. On the very same morning of September 30th, 2018, the victim, 25-year-old Angela Wimmer, got into her new Mazda car and plied the Cape Lane on her way home from church. She stopped at a red light and was getting ready to move when suddenly she was hit by Todd's truck going 60 miles per hour. The crash sent the Mazda into a 44-mile slide, crashing into 3 other vehicles in the process. At the scene, some of the people who witnessed the crash called 911 immediately to save young Angela's life.
They're trying to get somebody out of the car. It's a horrible wreck, so please hurry.
You need to send EMS here immediately.
And so, before the emergency services arrived, a lot was already done to help Angela. Later, she was rushed to the hospital for brain surgery, but sadly, just after a few hours, she was confirmed dead. Her family was completely devastated when they heard the news.
Around Memphis, Texas, when we got the call that there'd been an accident and she was
in critical. They said the policeman said that she had been in a car accident and that she was in surgery and she was having brain surgery. And he said that she had passed away.
Back at the accident scene, Todd was seen trying to pull back the car. It was obvious he was trying to get away from the mess he had created. Thankfully, this did not work out. He was taken to the hospital where his blood alcohol level was found to be 4 times the legal limit. While at the hospital, Todd would learn about the devastating effects of his actions. He was charged with 15 separate counts, including first-degree murder. It was revealed that Todd had been arrested several times before for DUI, 2 times in 2000 and 1 time in 2001, 2 times in 2003, and 1 time in 2007. This leaves me wondering how he was let off the hook so easily in each of his previous DUI arrests. Maybe if a judge had slammed a severe punishment on him, this accident would have been avoided. 6 recorded DUIs, and still, Todd had not learned to be more responsible. As it stands now, this is recorded as the 7th time his addiction hit him hard on the head. Todd has gotten himself into so much that he weeps bitterly for causing another untimely death.
I've struggled with alcoholism my whole life. It was never, ever my intent to get up that morning and hurt anyone.
After several court sessions, the judge finally sentences him to life imprisonment. But just before then, Todd has been granted a chance to say a few words in the courtroom.
I do not feel that I am a victim. The victim has passed away because of my ignorance, and I am so truly sorry to the family, to everybody else affected, to Miss Martinez, and I am so sorry for how much I'm hurting you, and I hope you heal fast in every way.
From those words and bodily expressions posed by Todd, one could say it's obvious that he regrets the pain he has caused the family and friends. On the evening of December 8th, 2020, Grace Coleman, after an evening of heavy drinking, made the devastating decision to get behind the wheel of her Range Rover and drive off. Grace Coleman's impaired judgment led to her running a red light at the intersection of Pelican Hill Road South and Newport Coast Drive, plowing her vehicle into the unsuspecting family's car as they made a left turn on a green light. The impact was horrific. The driver in the other car, Henry Saldana Maggia, and his wife, Gabriela Andrade, lost their lives, while their 3 young daughters had severe injuries. The eldest daughter, 5-year-old Emma, had sustained 2 broken legs and a broken arm, while her younger sister, Elena, who was 4 at the time, hit her head and broken arm. Also, Samantha, the youngest daughter, who was just about a year and a half, sustained a broken ankle. The young girls were resuscitated and taken to the hospital, where they luckily survived. According to family members, Henry had planned to spend quality time with his family after being locked up during the COVID-19 pandemic, and he had made arrangements for them to go out and have fun together.
He wanted to take them for a car, just for a car ride, at least. Just to go out and see. For sure, that was it. That's why they went out.
During the investigation, it was revealed that Grace Coleman had a blood alcohol content of 0.22% at the time of the crash, nearly 3 times the legal limit. Can you believe that? When someone cannot even walk with this amount of alcohol in their body, Coleman was driving. But it was not the first time she was driving drunk. Apparently, she had been arrested twice before for doing this, once in 2019 and the other just about 4 months before this. Grace was charged with a double murder, a hit and run, and also driving with a raised blood alcohol level. Burdened with guilt and remorse, stood before the court and pleaded guilty of all the charges. During the sentencing hearing, the prosecution urged the court to consider the severity of the crime and the lasting impact on the victims' loved ones. The family members of the victims shared their heartbreaking impact statements in the courtroom.
Those beautiful girls will never have their parents from the major moments of their lives. Who is going to walk them down the aisle if they ever get married? Who is going to dance with them at their quinceañera?
Andrade's mother, with her heart still shattered, spoke through a translator.
December 9th, 2020, I received a phone call to give me the saddest news. It was the worst thing that I could have heard. A pain that I will never be able to overcome. 2 of the couple's daughters, Emma and Elena, now 7 and 5, expressed their profound sadness through heartfelt letters and drawings.
My name is Emma Sofia. I write this letter because I miss my mom. My name is Elena. I miss my mom and my dad. I feel sad when the accident happened.
Even Grace Coleman could not hold back her tears as the impact of her actions weighed heavily upon her. She listened as the victim's family expressed their pain and loss, leaving an incredible mark on her conscience. Everyone would expect this to be a good opportunity for Coleman to attempt to make right her wrongs by at least apologizing and also taking responsibility for the damage she had caused this family. But no, she was not seen doing any of these other than just sobbing as the families all expressed their pain and loss. Well, maybe that was her way of showing how affected she was. I think. As the judge prepared to deliver the sentence, emotions ran high. Judge Greg L. Prickett addressed the victims' families, encouraging them to remember the good in their lives of their loved ones and find strength in moving forward.
I sense strongly that they would want you to continue to live your lives with joy, to appreciate every day, to raise those precious girls.
Grace was sentenced to 21 years to life in prison. The judge fought back tears, knowing that no sentence could truly ever heal the pain caused by this tragic event. Outside the court, Diana Salanda, a sister of one of the victims, shared her raw emotions with the media, urging others to recognize the devastating consequences of drunk driving.
It's very painful because they're not here to be with us to celebrate those milestones. It's very heartbreaking, and I just want to give a message to people: be responsible, don't drink and drive.
Myra Thibault Rios, the mother of Gabriela Andrade, also spoke while holding her 3 granddaughters tight during a news conference following the sentencing.
She says the girls are the ones most affected. They're the ones that suffer, that cry, that ask for mom and dad. What are we going to say when they ask where their parents are? They're the ones who ask.
Grace Coleman's sentencing to 21 years to life in prison might have brought the case to a close, but it can never fully heal the wounds inflicted on the affected families, especially for the little kids. Their lives will never be the same. Now let's dig into the last story that takes us to Santa Maria. On the night of March 16, 2019, 28-year-old Javier Cortez left a house party after consuming about 3 to 4 bottles of beer and a tequila jello shot. The host of the party had offered Javier and the other attendees the chance to spend the night at his house, but Javier, who already appeared drunk, refused. In a series of bad choices, Javier decided to drive home, and he did so successfully. But then the heavily drunk Javier decided to once again leave his house to follow his girlfriend, and this resulted in a fatal accident. He slammed his black Chrysler sedan straight into a white Cherokee containing 4 passengers, killing 2 of them and seriously injuring the others. The police and emergency responders arrived at the scene to find a horrific sight. The impact of the collision was so severe that the force ejected 2 of the passengers, named Olivio and Monica Gonzalez, from the vehicle, even though they were both wearing seatbelts. Tragically, 21-year-old Monica Gonzalez was confirmed to have lost her life on the spot. Meanwhile, 17-year-old Madison Coleman, the driver of the vehicle, was found pinned inside the Jeep due to the sheer force of the collision. The firefighters bravely fought against the engulfing flames to extricate her from the wreckage, but despite their heroic efforts, she was later pronounced dead. Amidst the chaos and grief, there were rays of hope. 2 of the victims of the accident and passengers of the vehicle, Everhart and Olivio, were rescued from the scene. Everhart received urgent medical attention at the Marion Regional Medical Center, while Olivio's injuries required more specialized care, leading her to be flown to Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. Miraculously, they both survived the harrowing ordeal. According to friends, Madison Coleman and Monica Gonzalez worked in the food service industry. Gonzalez was working at McDonald's and Coleman was working at Taco Bell. In an interview, Gonzalez's shift manager Kevin said,
"She was just a leader. She really, she'd get all the crew members together and get them doing what they needed to do. If the managers had to deal with something, there's never going to be those moments anymore, laughing or, I need this done, and she's right there to do it for you. It's going to be a pretty big loss, not just for the business, but for everyone else here."
Coleman's grandmother, Susie Van Benthuizen, on a phone call with a news channel said,
"She was a sweet girl. She had a job. She always went to her work. She was super nice. She didn't have a mean bone in her body. She loved everybody. She wanted to be everybody's friend, and she loved to sing. Her voice was so beautiful."
Now, here is what happened to Javier after the accident. Javier was tested and found to be having a blood alcohol content of 0.17%, more than twice the legal limit of 0.8%. To make it even worse, he ran a red light, traveling at 104 miles per hour. Authorities revealed that Javier had an odor of alcohol and was slurring his words when he was interviewed. It's unclear exactly when his trial began. However, during the trial, Deputy District Attorney Stephen Wagner told the judge that Javier showed a complete disregard for public safety, demonstrating complete insensitivity. He also pointed out that Javier had so many opportunities to abort his decision. Stephen Wagner recalls that the host of the party announced to all of his guests that they had a place to stay that night. Javier could have also changed his mind when he managed to get home, but he did not. A year before the accident, Javier Cortez was part of a DUI investigation where he signed as a responsible party and was asked to take custody of his cousin who was involved in a DUI incident. His cousin had been arrested for impaired driving. Stephen Wagner referred to this incident several times during the trial. He was convinced that it proved Javier knew the dangers of driving while intoxicated, and Wagner further went on to tell the court that while it was clear that Javier did not intentionally kill the victims, we cannot consider his conduct to be an accident. He insisted that the defendant's decisions and actions were intentional. His action to drive at a speed over 90 miles per hour and to run the red light were all intentional. Javier initially denied all special allegations, pleading not guilty, but as the trial progressed over the years, he changed his stand. The defense attorney admitted that his client made horrible choices, resulting in horrible damage. He told the court that Javier was prepared to undergo a very substantial punishment, admitting to his wrongfulness of his conduct. In November 2022, 3 years after the incident, Javier Cortez was finally sentenced to 21 years to life in prison for the second-degree murder and DUI felony, with a special allegation of causing great bodily injury. Judge John McGregor, in his address, stated that he often indicates the difference between driving under the influence of alcohol and driving under the influence of drugs when passing sentencing for drunk driving cases that involve misbehaving persons. Deputy District Attorney Stephen Wagner said that Javier's eventual guilty plea was merely a step toward healing for the families, whose lives had forever been tragically altered by the incident. Olivia, one of the survivors of the crash, gave an impactful statement. She wrote that after undergoing more than 10 surgeries, her life is not the same anymore. She feels like her life no longer makes sense, like she is useless. As a result of the brain injuries, Olivia experiences confusion and relies on a wheelchair, struggling with regular hip and back pain. She also said that she lost 2 of her best friends, whom she considered to be her sisters. Maria Marcias, mother to Monica Gonzalez, one of the victims, in an emotional statement said that Javier Cortez does not deserve freedom since he took from her the most precious thing in her life. Madison Coleman's mother told Javier that his actions have changed the lives of many families, including his own. While Javier eventually faced the consequences of his actions with a lengthy prison sentence, the pain and loss endured by the victims' families can never truly be compensated.
In California, the urgent hunt is intensifying for the person who shot and killed a 6-year-old little boy on a freeway.
Heartbroken parents are weeping for their beautiful little girl, 4-year-old Lily Rose Garcia.
Outrage tonight after a road rage shooting on Sierra Highway takes the life of a 4-year-old boy.
Displaced anger and high life stress can be linked to what we call nowadays road rage. According to studies, road rage can also be fueled and significantly amplified by alcohol and drugs. Aiden Leos, Lily Rose Garcia, and Gore Adam Yan were only kids who experienced road rage and never got to tell the tale. Their family and friends, though, did, and their tale is nothing but heartbreaking. Aiden Leos was the son of Joanna Clunan and Joey Leos, and he was a charismatic 6-year-old boy. Described as a little empath, Aiden had this amazing ability to empathize with the people around him. He liked to tell jokes and specialized in silly dances. He was also described as a boy mature beyond his years. For his last birthday, as he was about to blow out the candles, Joanna said that he looked at his family and said, "I just wish for everyone to be happy." But everyone around him became unhappy. On the morning of May 21st, 2021, while riding in his mother's car heading to kindergarten at Calvary Chapel in Yorba Linda, the unthinkable happened. Joanna was just about to exit the 55 freeway in Orange County when a car cut her off and kept going as if nothing had happened. Unfortunately, she didn't let it go. She drove next to the other car and saw a young female driver and flipped her off. It was a move she wished she had never done. Everything happened so fast.
Behind me that cut me off abruptly. I heard a really loud noise and my son said, "Ow," and I had to pull over and he got shot.
Fires northbound 55 from Chapman. We're getting a report that there is a child that has been shot in the back.
Aiden was holding his stomach while blood was coming out.
I tried to put my hand on his wounds while calling 911 because he's losing a lot of blood.
While the ambulance arrived as soon as possible and Aiden made it to the children's hospital, he left there his last breath. Joanna's shock crippled her. She could barely speak or move. Los Angeles Times wrote that a bullet entered Clunan's car from the rear, striking her son through his back. Witnesses who were driving close to Joanna and Aiden stated that they indeed heard a gunshot before the mother pulled over. The California Highway Patrol characterized it as an act of road rage. In addition to the people who stopped and gave statements, they urged anyone with any information to come forward. Instantly, a reward of $50,000 was offered that quickly grew to $500,000, with donations from politicians, a local cafe owner, and even people who had never even met the family. And so many people came forward. In the meantime, a vigil was held on the overpass, where relatives, friends, and strangers who were also affected by what happened could leave stuffed animals, flowers, and balloons. But donations didn't stop there. A GoFundMe account was created, and numerous anonymous people donated thousands of dollars to help Aiden's family with funeral expenses. At Aiden's school, a memorial was held for him, where students and staff hung his pictures, ribbons, his favorite colors, and a sign that read, "Aiden, we love you." For weeks, the authorities' investigation led to no arrests, even though the vehicle of interest had been instantly identified as a 2018 or 2019 white Volkswagen Golf sports wagon. However, the evidence continued to mount, and based on the witnesses' descriptions, the driver and passenger were identified.
This is Orange County, California. When you commit a crime in our county, you're going to be held responsible to the fullest extent of the law.
On Sunday, June 6, 2021, the authorities arrested Marcus Anthony Ares, aged 24, and Win Lee, aged 23, at their home in Costa Mesa, and were taken into custody for questioning. Initially, law enforcement sources revealed only two things. Firstly, Ares had uploaded on a social media account a picture of him with a type of weapon capable of discharging the round that killed Aiden. Secondly, that the suspects were under surveillance before their arrests. In early 2024, their trial began.
Mark Aiden's mother, Joanna Clunan, took the witness stand today, and she had an emotional support dog by her side. Her testimony lasted no more than 30 minutes today. She did get emotional at times, but for the most part remained very calm and collected. All she wants is justice for her son.
That was the first time Joanna and her son's killer came face to face. She described to the best of her abilities what happened that day, and then it was Ares' turn to speak up about the heinous crime he committed.
During the trial today, a video of Ariz's interrogation after he was arrested was played. In the video, Ariz says, "The lady got hostile toward us. I don't know why. I have no answer why, but I pulled out my Glock and pulled the trigger and it was gone."
Ironically, Ares told the investigators that he started carrying a gun because of the crazy drivers on the road. So when he was asked about why he fired that gun against the woman, he stated that,
"I don't have an answer because I'm stupid. I didn't think of anything. I didn't think of the consequences or anyone."
Daniel Feldman, the Orange County District Attorney, and Randall Bethune, Ares' attorney, painted two completely different pictures of Ares. Bethune claimed that a young 24-year-old man who had very little life experience had a momentary lapse of reason. He continued by saying that he did not try to hide, that he was unaware of what he had done, and that when he found out, he tried to protect his girlfriend from his action. On the other hand, Feldman went as far as claiming that it wasn't even road rage, but an expression of cold indifference, callous, and total disregard of human life. Finally, Ares gave his statement of regret.
"So sorry for ever hurting him
and for the pain that he went through because of me. He never deserved it, and neither did his family. Miss Clunan, I am truly sorry for taking your beautiful son away from you. There are no words. For deeply and truly sorry for parting you and your son, or putting you and your son through so much pain.
Erez's apology lasted minutes, during which he was constantly asking for forgiveness from everyone who had ever been involved in this case, even God. But the judge was not moved, and in the end, he addressed Erez.
Particular moment, you had the power, and the power was that handgun. And whether it was to impress your girlfriend, to release your anger, you fired. And that little boy died.
He got 40 years to life in prison. As for Wen Lee, she was charged with being an accessory after the fact and having a concealed firearm in a car. She was out on bail awaiting trial.
I want my son to be remembered for the beautiful soul that he was. He just didn't deserve that. No one deserves that.
A little kid lost his life because an adult lost his temper. And while justice has been served, the loss, the grief, the anger, and the endless pain will forever be resonating in the hearts of Aiden's family and friends. Years before Aiden, though, another case shocked the nation.
There's an adult holding and looked like an unresponsive child.
Gone. My Lily's gone. It's just not coming home.
Alan Garcia was driving on Interstate 40, and his 4-year-old daughter Lily and his 7-year-old Isaac were sitting in the back of his pickup truck on their way home from school. According to Alan, he attempted to exit the highway to go to the grocery store, but a car cut him off and blocked him. Alan then told the police that he got angry and called him a f***ing idiot. The other driver pulled beside Alan, rolled the window down, and shouted something at Garcia, but he couldn't understand what it was. At that point, he sped up to get away from the driver, but as he did, he heard 2 gunshots striking his car, followed by Isaac's voice shouting, "She's bleeding." While the other car was still beside Alan's, he heard a 3rd gunshot, and before it sped away, he heard one last one. Alan pulled over immediately, only to see little Lily being shot in the head. He did the best he could to aid her, and even 2 nurses stopped as they passed by.
He, her devastated dad, sitting on the road beside his truck as cops try to comfort him.
But not long after, Lily was declared dead at the hospital.
It's guilt that this happened to my daughter. I'm supposed to lay my life down for my kids, not the other way around.
So who was that driver who pulled a gun so easily and destroyed the Garcia family?
On an anonymous tip, cops arrested 32-year-old Tony Torres. According to police, he has confessed to shooting Lily.
Torres was a man who, between 2006 and 2014, had been arrested for 4 violent felony arrests, but had not been convicted in any of them. And unfortunately, the year after, he crossed the Garcias. While Torres was in prison, the Garcias, as well as the rest of the country, were mourning little Lily.
Community turned out for a number of vigils for Lily, even raising more than $80,000 in a GoFundMe account.
Lily was characterized as a vibrant little girl who was always laughing. In one of her vigils, about 300 mourners gathered in the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary Catholic Church in Albuquerque, with some of them wearing t-shirts of her laughing and others with the message, "Justice for Lily." The small white coffin was surrounded by people who loved her, and by random people who showed up for support. Grief, anger, and despair filled the atmosphere. So Police Chief Gordon Eden stated, "I would ask that your anger not to turn into hate, but your anger to turn into action."
When you met her, your heart just melted. She was just amazing. She was so bright. She loved to dance. She loved to sing.
While there will never be any comfort for the Garcias, they did see Torres getting instantly convicted. Veronica Garcia, speaking to Inside Edition, could not hide her anger.
This took my baby girl. And you know what? I'm going to make sure that he sees her face every single day, and I'm gonna make sure that he suffers, and I'm gonna make sure that he's put away for the rest of his life.
At this point, it makes one wonder what such a man had to say for himself. Torres claimed that it was a total accident, that he didn't even look. He pointed and shot because he feared for his life, and that he almost wrecked twice. As he kept on talking though, he changed his tune and realized that there would be consequences. Torres's lawyer presumably knew the jury wouldn't buy that defensive approach. By going with that story, he was risking getting a conviction for first-degree murder and facing life. Upon entering the courtroom and just before the judge announced his conviction, the sound of sobbing and shackles filled up the air with agony. He pleaded guilty. Torres signed the plea deal, and the judge convicted him to 16 years in the Department of Corrections for second-degree murder and a gun charge. Upon hearing his sentence, Alan Garcia stated,
I hope his time in prison is a living hell. I would have known what I know now about that day. I wouldn't have swerved. My daughter's life was worth more than 20 cents, cost of a 9mm bullet, and 16 years.
When it was her turn, Veronica Garcia expressed herself by saying,
Torres has done nothing but caused harm and havoc with anyone that he has come into contact with, dating back to 2005. He has chosen a life of drugs and intimidation and has never been held accountable for his actions.
As for Torres himself, he was nothing but apologetic.
Sorry for taking the life of Louie. That was never my intention. I thought I was gonna be the next road rage victim.
Ultimately, after the trial, Veronica Garcia issued one last statement.
The amount of time in prison is enough for the precious life that was taken.
For your information, Torres could get out in 12 years and 9 months with good time. As said earlier, if he hadn't signed that plea deal and the case had gone to trial, he could have been charged with first-degree murder and convicted to life. Again, the Garcias will never find peace. In an interview with NBC, among other things, Veronica and Alan expressed their guilt, but also their infinite love for Lily.
You remember Lily's spirit.
Big, beautiful smile from ear to ear and big, beautiful brown eyes.
Her laugh. She always had a laugh.
How do you guys move forward?
Because of that little guy over there. I have no choice but because of him.
We've all heard the phrase, life goes on. However, cases like Aiden and Lily's beg the question, how? And so does Gore Adamyan's case. A lesser-known phrase is that history teaches us that man is not taught by history. 8 years after Lily's murder and 2 years after Aiden's, tragedy struck the Adamyan family.
The identity of a 4-year-old boy tragically shot and killed in a road rage incident over the weekend has now been released. Gore Adamyan was in the backseat of a car when the shooting happened in Lancaster.
In December 2023, just a week before Christmas, Gore and his parents were driving to the grocery store when another driver aggressively cut them off and started chasing them in the area of Sarah Highway and East Avenue J in Lancaster. The Adamyans slowed down. The other car eventually pulled up alongside. The female passenger handed the gun to the male driver, who, with no hesitation, fired 8 shots, 3 of those hitting the 4-year-old. Gore's parents rushed him to the hospital, but it was too late. The police acted immediately. The city's new high-tech crime-fighting system led LA County deputies to the suspects.
Cam that picked up part of the plate, and once we had part of the plate, we could track it. And we tracked it to a hotel. This particular suspect was in custody a week ago for a gun-related felony, and they had to let him go because of the new bail laws.
Unfortunately, 10 months before the shooting, the family had decided to move to a more affordable area, a decision they would gravely regret.
Shock, anger, cutting through the night in Lancaster 1 week before Christmas.
Lancaster residents gathered in the area where the boy was gunned down, bringing candles and photos of the 4-year-old Gore.
Here, but they're almost dead in spirit, dead in soul, dead in life.
And as if losing your child is not indescribably painful, not being able to afford to bury it comes as a twist of fate and a reminder of how far under the belt life can hit. A GoFundMe account was created for the Adamyans, where thousands of people showed their support, restoring once more the faith in humanity.
For Christmas, it's just devastating. I just could not imagine. I mean, how do you even celebrate Christmas? I couldn't even think. The Christmas trees and the presents and the food, or all that is meaningless because they don't have their child.
Today, the Adamyans demand justice and expect the people responsible to spend their lives in prison. So far, Buckhard has already been to court, and the charges against him are attempted murder and murder. His extended criminal record includes several felony arrests and 6 convictions. His last arrest was on grand theft charges.
I wish they had shot them at the apprehension. Let's be clear about that. You cannot go into cities and shoot 4-year-old children and expect anything resembling due process. And the fact that they got it was unfortunate. I'm not a big proponent of the death penalty, but there are some crimes that require something more than what they're giving people, because it's getting worse.
Whether you share the mayor's point of view or not, love it or loathe it, accept it or reject it, the fact remains, it is getting worse.
Who got slammed to the ground on pavement, and we have nothing. Zero. Zilch. This isn't a fight. This is just a beatdown.
Louisville police tell us it all started as road rage over the weekend. They say here on I-20, Brittany Griffith shot the teen girl in the face.
Oh my God! What's wrong with you?
A scary episode of road rage as excited music fans head to Coachella.
He just approached me and just held the gun in my face on me to get on the ground. And
It's on my husband! Call 911! Call 911! He's on my husband!
A wife witnessing her husband's final moments.
Why does history repeat itself? Why don't we learn? Here are the top 3 advice from the online safety trainer that can potentially save lives. 1. Remain calm. Try to keep your emotions in check and avoid getting caught up in the heat of the moment. 2. Avoid confrontation. Do not engage with the other driver or respond in kind to their aggressive behavior. 3. Get out of the way. If possible, move to a different lane or exit to avoid the other driver. What do you think causes someone to go to such extremes? Are only these people to blame, or are they just byproducts of angry societies? Please let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.